Online multiplayer has been a core fixture in gaming for a pretty long time now. Ever since we figured out how to shoot a rocket at some guy on the other side of the planet, we just never stopped doing it. But what happens when everyone logs off but the server stays up? These places designed for many, now inhabited by none. Wandering these empty worlds can feel pretty unnerving, and that creepy feeling has been channeled into projects like No Players Online and Server Blight. But that's not what this video is about, because I personally don't get that feeling. I don't want this to be one of those, ooh, spooky, darkroom and GM construct videos. Instead, I want this to be a celebration of internet culture and history by exploring a bunch of these empty or forgotten servers, and also checking out some other neat things I found along the way. I would also like to say that this is not an original idea in the slightest. Lots of people have made videos like this one, and I'd like to specifically recommend Redlyne's Exploring Dead Games and Logan from Earth's Where Are We Now series, as I'm basically ripping them off, taking inspiration from them. We're going to be looking at some extremely popular games, as well as some more obscure ones you might not have heard of. There's no reason to delay any further, so let's get into the first game. Minecraft is one of those intergenerational games that's remained culturally relevant for well over a decade at this point, and shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. Now, let's be real, we both know what Minecraft is. There's no reason for me to give a lengthy introduction, so let's just skip all that and start looking at the servers. This was an Anarchy server, so I was going in expecting some real desecrated wasteland, but it was actually pretty normal. They had 50 blocks of spawn protection, but even outside of that I only saw like 2 lava casts and 1 griefed build. It was somehow more put together than some regular servers I've seen. I came across a building for the Shovel Society, which is a group that builds roads. They had signs up stating when they were last online, ranging from just a few days ago to about a week before I recorded. There was another sign saying Hudson was sick in real life, explaining the absence. I know I'm a few months late, but hope you get well soon. I think it's worth saying that while a lot of the servers I'm looking at are empty, they're not all dead. I'm on the other side of the planet to most of these servers, so there's a good chance I'm just playing during quiet hours. Back at spawn I did the parkour, which gave me a pretty good view of the starting area. I found a big mine that I decided to descend. You can jump into the water at the bottom, but I decided to take the scenic route. It felt like that part in Uzumaki, you know the one. At the bottom I'd found they'd dug around the spawn protected area, and there was some diamonds right on the border. Unlucky. When I joined Kaisercraft, I actually ended up in a different server called Chaotic United, so I'm pretty sure these were separate servers that got merged together at some point. Interesting. There were teleports to things like creative plots, minigames, and skyblock, but I thought I'd start off with survival. There was a protected area around spawn, but right outside of that I found a casino which seemed to have some kind of redstone slot machines built inside it. Nearby was a holy site with offerings to Don the skeleton, Phil the dog, and PG-13 the horse. Don was missing though, and inside I saw a sign saying he was despawned by natural causes, so I left my How to Claim Land books to pay respects. I random teleported a couple times and then ended up at someone's base. I poked around and found a building named 16's Blackjack with a functioning redstone card table inside. What is up with this server's gambling problem? Over in the creative plots there was a couple cool builds, but not really much to talk about. I had to switch game versions to get into the vanilla server and it was just nuked, everything was destroyed. I guess they weren't as resilient as Melon Anarchy was. In Skyblock, I couldn't find a way to get into the other islands, so I just started looking at warps and had to check out Jaden's shitty courtyard. This brought me over to minigames and put me in these stone halls, a labyrinth of stone bricks that seemingly stretched on forever. I found the old minigames lobby, couldn't do anything, and ended up getting pretty lost in here, and I got truly stuck when I found some parkour that I couldn't complete as my hunger was too low. Ending it off with some minigames. I can't play them since I'm alone, but parkour would work fine, so I had to show off my insane skills. This one was interesting. It's a recreation of a Disneyland park, and I think it's worth noting that I've never been to Disneyland, or really many theme parks at all. I know I've been to Luna Park in Sydney, but that would have been well over a decade ago now. It needed a custom resource pack, so I downloaded that and then started out in the parking lot. I hopped onto a tram and they had a fully voiced announcement on the way there.
We're now en route to the Disneyland Resort Entrance Plaza, gateway to Disneyland, Disney's California Adventure, and Downtown Disney.
There was a lot of effort put into making this experience feel authentic. I went into the gift store and picked up some Donald Duck plush and then tried out some of the rides. Most were slow dark rides through various Disney movies using actual audio from the real rides. That's all I can really play, or else the Disney lawyers will come for me. They had this one Toy Story ring toss game, and I can only really talk about how ring toss doesn't work well in Minecraft. But I'm more concerned about this audio. I'm pretty sure they just pulled this from someone's YouTube upload of the real ride, and it's a complete assault on the senses. I got lost after this, and then kicked for flying, and it wouldn't let me reconnect. I checked their website, and the last update was in February 2024. They did keep a development log though, and I couldn't help but notice that it took a whole year to complete the last 20% of the Monsters Inc. ride. There's probably more to see that I just didn't get the chance to explore, but it was a pretty cool and interesting experience nonetheless. It's probably more impactful if you're a big Disney or theme park fan. This one started by making me pick a gender, as it had a gender-based ranked system. I have genuinely no clue what that could mean, but my best guess is that the roles would be things like king or queen depending on your choice. Neither of the buttons worked, and then I fell in a hole and got stuck. It's actually over. Next up is Chilltown, and it did not give a great first impression. This was a creative server where a bunch of people built a city together. I went to a school and found I could assign titles, so obviously I went with the jock. Apparently it cost me $10 and it didn't even work. What a rip. I checked out the creative plots, but it was pretty barren. Outside of a few right by spawn, it was just empty. They had some nice looking builds, but they also had this gigantic FromSoft area title drop that made it really hard to look at things. I looked at the warps, and I just had to see what the Five Nights at Freddy's build was all about. I was greeted by pixel art so big it didn't even fit in my render distance, and I had that shit maxed out. Inside the building was really dark, so I'll probably brighten it in post a little. I have no idea if this is meant to be a direct build from one of the games or if it's just inspired by them. I honestly just don't know that much about Five Nights at Freddy's. I did recognize The Office from 2 though, at least I think that's what this was meant to be. Next up was the cinema, and it was just weird seeing posters up on the walls. These high quality pictures just feel so out of place next to Minecraft textures. I just started going down the list of warps, stuff like a space museum, IKEA, and a recreation of Lego Island, pretty cool. It was going great until I decided to warp to Nice View. I thought it would be something like a nice mountain range, maybe a beautiful cityscape. It was not that. Yeah, real classy. This server was actually nothing. Immediately, it was telling me about the Bluegill Bonanza, which would be running for the next 2 hours. I gather it was meant to be some kind of fantasy roleplay server since it had commands about vampires and werewolves. Also, it just straight up lied about what commands I could use. Outside of spawn, I could only find one house with a sign saying, "If you grief here, you're banned." And I accidentally blew up a creeper outside, so guess I'm banned. This one had a variety of game modes, but I only looked at the carnival. First thing I noticed was a music toggle, so I turned that on. This was a full-blown virtual amusement park with functional games and rides. Not all of them worked, but the ones that did were pretty well animated. This music though, it was just weird. There was this somber track playing and it just made the whole vibe kinda sad. This place was clearly meant to be inhabited by many people, and I'm just here wandering, alone. It gave me a strong sense of canopsia, and that's the only time I'm gonna say that word in this video. Anyway, I realized that the music was just Minecraft soundtrack, and it's one of the newer songs, so I didn't recognize it. The music toggle from before was related to note block volume, which I had way down for some reason. It's just carnival music. Yeah, that checks out. There really wasn't much to say about this one, but I found some signs just outside of spawn from one of its old players asking if anyone from back then still plays and saying, "Hope life is good and you are all well." There was a few more signs from other players too, so I left my own with a date. Stick around because this one was interesting. This is an old German server, and it was just an open free-build creative world. I couldn't interact with anything, but I was only here to look anyway. There was no theme, no consistency, just a bunch of builds. Look at this old school iron farm. Man, these things were such a bitch to make, especially since doors didn't stack back then. I can't show everything, but this place was just a joy to explore. You really had no idea what you were going to see next. Some pixel art, rebuilt sports stadiums, people's skins built at a large scale, and a lot of weird redstone stuff. I absolutely had to check out this behemoth contraption. I did a bit of translating because I didn't want to accidentally fuck anything up, but this was a fully functional redstone calculator. How the fuck did someone make this with 2010 redstone? Shit, maybe German engineering is the best in the world. There was a lot of signs placed around that I couldn't read. I'll probably edit in some retroactive translation in post. Except for this sign in the club, which absolutely annihilated the language barrier. I found a railway which I think was trying to take me back to spawn, but it just stopped midway through and I had to fly all the way back. I never played on this server, but flying around still feels oddly nostalgic. It just encapsulates the early 2010s perfectly, both the culture of Minecraft and the internet culture as a whole. I saw a fucking Nightcore sign. You can even spot when Mojang added the ability to make bigger nether portals and someone was testing how big they could go. I would occasionally see names repeated on multiple signs and messages about how people loved the server. It was clear that this was important to a lot of people, and it's a miracle that over a decade later I can still walk around and visit their builds. One thing that did stick out to me was this building pretty far out that had items laying on the ground. For those who don't know, dropped items disappear after 5 real-world minutes if nobody picks them up, but Minecraft only loads a few chunks surrounding the player at any given moment. So if you drop some items and then move far away enough that the chunk they're in unloads, they effectively have their 5-minute timer paused until you come back and load the chunks again. It made me wonder how long it had been since these chunks were loaded. Have these items been sitting here for over 10 years? Has nobody visited this building in that long? It's kinda scary to think about. I looked on their website and yeah, it definitely looks its age. I found out that the server was up from 2010 through to 2014, when it was taken offline until in 2021 they brought it back for people to reminisce. They had other modes like survival and minigames, but I had no idea how to access them. Maybe you needed to be registered or something. I could view the live maps though, so there's that. I got to see what minigames they hosted too. A bit of spleef, maybe a little survival games, or maybe you're more into Death Cube. There was a page with some images from the server in its heyday, videos too, but unfortunately a lot of them are lost to time. There was also a page logging every person who had joined and how long they were on for, and out of the last 100 days, there was only one other person who'd played for a meaningful amount of time. It's clear that this server is never going to return to its former glory, but it's comforting to know that players can still visit it and see what they had going on all those years ago. Half-Life 2 Deathmatch is a multiplayer arena shooter released very shortly after Half-Life 2, and I've never played it. Not much more to say than that, so let's jump right in. This first one was called Pensioner Fun Server. It was just standard Half-Life 2 Deathmatch with bots. Maybe I'm just trash at Deathmatch, but these bots would just snap to you with the Magnum and I was just getting destroyed. Maybe they knew I wasn't actually a pensioner and they were gatekeeping me. Unsurprisingly, most servers are just vanilla Deathmatch, but that's not really what I'm looking for, so I'll be ignoring these from here on out. This was some kind of build test server, and while it was a lot closer to what I was looking for, it was basically empty. It was called War Map, so I assume this was meant to be played by a lot of players, probably with vehicles too, since the map was absolutely gigantic. I walked around a couple buildings and then logged off. I decided to check out a jailbreak server. The rebels are imprisoned and need to try and break out, and the Combine need to keep them imprisoned. It gave some rules and objectives for each team, like how the Combine may torture prisoners in the torture bay, or play soccer with prisoners in the soccer fields. I spawned as a rebel in my cell, and I think without any Combine players to let me out, I was completely trapped here. I messed around for a few minutes, and then remembered I can killbind. Next round I respawned as Combine. I walked around, smashed some watermelons, blew up the storage closet, and then got trapped in what I assume is the torture bay. Guess I'll never get to play soccer. While browsing, I noticed a couple servers hosting co-op maps. I had no idea co-op Half-Life 2 Deathmatch was even a thing, and it piqued my interest since games tailored for the co-op experience are surprisingly uncommon. You really just get a couple indie games now and then, and whatever Hazelight is up to. But if I was going to explore a co-op map, I was going to explore it co-op. So I've got my good friend Cordial Dude joining me. Okay, so like, fair warning, I just saw that these servers exist. I have no idea if they're like any good at all. So,
that's fine.
This might suck. The first server took forever to load because it was downloading a bunch of completely random shit. Pinball with smells like Teen Spirit.mp3. Stairway to Heaven. Why am I getting all these like rock songs as MP3s?
Yeah, it is like classic rock.
It actually took around 12 minutes and then crashed the moment we got in. My dude, sending client info. It crashed. I'm not joking, it actually just crashed.
You gotta be kidding.
Off to a great start. Next server advertised itself as puzzle/fishing, and I love some good fishing. First thing we noticed was a ring in the middle with 2 lightsabers inside. Oh my god, there's lightsabers in the ring. Along the wall there was 12 rooms, each with a different challenge, and completing all of them would unlock a door at the end. First room was a platforming challenge up some ice. I barely got even halfway and then fell. Room 2 was a blindingly bright black and white maze.
Oh, this is a maze.
Okay, get me on the left wall.
No, that's right.
Oh god, it's so loud.
Can I like soft lock you?
You can. Room 3 was another platforming challenge, and I think from here you can tell where this is going. Every one of these rooms was some variation of climbing challenge, platforming course, or a vehicle jump. Most of these are brutally difficult too, like this one where you had to place bricks on these platforms and then jump off the bricks since you can't stand on the platforms yourself, or a tightrope walk while your camera is angled 45 degrees.
Go on. Look, I'll come with you. So just like, so what do you think this is?
I do want to know what was up with this one though. It was a huge room with the objective on the roof, and you're given a pulse rifle and some tires.
You see, you grab a tire.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I have genuinely no idea what it wanted me to do here. I'm guessing it's some kind of engine glitch or niche interaction with the alt-fire, but I don't know the forbidden Half-Life 2 tech. Something else you might have noticed is that nothing in this co-op map is actually cooperative. As far as I know, the only thing that even required 2 people was the lightsaber duels. I'd assume the idea is for a big group of people to split up and do each challenge individually, but when I imagine a co-op map, I'm not imagining 12 people sealed in their own torture chambers.
Whoever designed this map is like a sadist. This is a jigsaw.
And the real nail in the coffin? Didn't even have any fishing. Since this server was a bust, we just started checking out random servers together. So even though they're not strictly co-op anymore, the rest of this segment will still be guest starring renowned OCE Nagoriyuki main Cordial Dude. We saw a server hosting a Mario Kart map, and I had to check it out because I have a lot of fond memories of those maps in other Source games. Unfortunately, this was maybe the saddest Mario Kart map I've ever seen. This dingy, dimly lit room made out of repeating NES Mario textures. It also doesn't help that this is a precision driving challenge and not a racetrack. This one was simply titled The Fun Server, and the last 2 servers have been not that, so hopefully this will be a good change of pace.
I hope it downloads Aerosmith Walk This Way.wap.
I can't really show much of this, since sprinting in this connection kinda gives me a headache. It was a freeze tag server. Someone is it, and they have to tag another player, and then that player becomes it. Doesn't really work great when there's only 2 people. I don't have much more to say, but when I went looking for footage of freeze tag back when people actually played it, I found this one from a couple years back saying, "Rest in peace, the fun server, September 2021. I don't know if this means the server went offline at some point, or if it just means the server has been empty for nearly 4 years now. This one was titled Tomb of the Goon Squad, and it was hosting the Goon Squad game mode. Tomb of
Look
the
at the map.
Goon
Can you connect and look at the map for a second?
What the fuck could possibly be happening in here? I was expecting something absolutely insane, but it was actually just Deathmatch. And for some reason it had this creepy ambience over it.
What is the eerie noise? Did you hear that ominous ringing?
I have literally nothing else to talk about. I'm so disappointed. It's another co-op map, same deal as the last one, but a few of these challenges were actually pretty easy, so we could complete a couple of them. These would give you car batteries you'd use to open a big door. We didn't do many of them because they mostly just weren't fun, and some because we didn't know what to do. Oh wait, there's a platform over there for you to like get in the container, I think?
What do you mean?
It's like over where I'm aiming at, this a ladder you can go up.
Oh yeah, this ladder? This ladder that doesn't exist? That one?
It has the same problem as the other one, where the cooperative aspect just isn't there.
Oh.
This
That's
is so cooperative.
So puzzle.
Final server, Minecraft Death Run. We both spawned on the runner's side, but once Cordial Dude died, it split us to different teams. Pretty standard Death Run affair. One team runs an obstacle course, and the other team activates traps to stop them. But I think this first room was actually impossible solo if the death player was even remotely competent. Also, since the teams never switched, I was trapped here for eternity. Now, Roblox isn't really a game, more a tool to create games in, and it's far from empty. Like, holy shit. It's hosting over 40 million user-made experiences, and even though like 99% of those are probably untouched templates, it's still an insane amount of content, and more than anyone could realistically play in a lifetime. Despite the company itself being pretty objectively evil, there is a fair amount of great community-made games on here. In the past, I've talked about some Yumaniki fan games that I'm quite fond of, and since those usually have no players online, I could very well do that again with some new ones that have sprung up since my last video on the topic. But I feel like that wouldn't fit into this video too well, so I'm actually going to lay out some rules for this segment. Every game I'm looking at has to be over a decade old, and has to have at least 1 million visits. This way it's games that were well known a long time ago, but are now forgotten. We're all familiar with Gmod's murder game mode, and unsurprisingly it's had its fair share of Roblox knockoffs. If you've ever been on the site, you're probably familiar with Murder Mystery 2, which despite being 11 years old now, will at any given moment have more players online than the population of Greenland. But the same year Murder Mystery 2 was created, there was another murder clone called Twisted Murderer, which has been almost completely forgotten, getting its last update in 2018. There was actually someone else online when I joined, but they were AFK the whole time. It needed 4 people to start, so all I could do was walk around the lobby. None of the buttons worked, and it was stuck trying to load my info. Yeah, this will be a pretty common theme for this segment. Since Roblox loves to break things with its engine updates, a lot of games might just not work anymore. There really wasn't much I could say since, the game wouldn't start. But just as I was about to hop off, 2 more people joined. We loaded into some spooky haunted school map, and some things just straight up had no collision. I walked around for about 30 seconds, and then fell out of the map and died. Amazing. When I got back to the lobby, everyone had just left, even the AFK guy. Being the last player standing, I think that means I win. I thought I was done, but while I was writing down the notes for this segment, more people joined. I wondered why people would join a dead game that doesn't even work anymore, and I suppose they were thinking the same thing since they told me they came from someone else's favorites and asked how I got here. I said I was just looking around old servers, and Minecraft 60,000 said they were looking at the recently played on their old account. We talked about a couple old games, and they mentioned an RPG called The Legend of the Fallen Kingdom 1, and disconnected without saying another word, so we're going there next. Right off the bat, there's a HUD element trying to sell me something. Not a great first impression. The colors are also really oversaturated for some reason. This was just one of those grindfest incremental RPGs where you kill enemies to buy a slightly better sword, to kill slightly stronger enemies to buy a slightly better sword. The enemy AI was completely broken until they were killed and respawned once, then it worked. The sword hitbox was always active too, so you didn't even need to swing it, you could just jiggle it around in front of the enemies and eventually they'll die. There was some magic staffs you could get, but they didn't really work. They seem to ignore where you're aiming and gravitate towards some unknown point. I didn't spend very long on this one, but I did vaguely remember playing something similar back in the day, so I went looking for that. Fight the Monsters was not much better than the last one. In fact, you could probably even argue that it was worse. A majority of things have no texture, there's no progression gates so you can just walk into endgame enemies, and you can tell the child exploitation techniques had improved by the time this one came out because the menu trying to sell you shit is now brightly colored and has a big red arrow. For some reason, I had these 2 way oversized, poorly textured weapons that did an obscene amount of damage. I thought it might have been from like a Game Pass or something, but I checked and I've got nothing. Bosses here have really funny names too. Enemies are stuff like Knight, Thief, Fire Knight, Dominus Infernos, the Titan of Dominion. I can't do that voice anymore, fuck. All of the enemies are just made out of catalog assets, because this is from a time before you could just upload your own custom models to your games. It definitely doesn't look good, but it's at least a little charming seeing these items basically kit bashed together to make enemies. Gives some real Sid from Toy Story 1 vibes. It's just a time capsule of a bygone era. It's easy to forget just how bad a lot of older Roblox games looked, especially with so many modern creators trying to emulate the old Roblox style nowadays. Games didn't look like this back then. They looked like this. Not to say that I dislike this trend though, sure I haven't touched most of the games doing this, and it's kinda weird to me how many kids are nostalgic for a time that they weren't around for, but I think it's good that people can push this art style in a way that wasn't possible back then. It's kinda like how there's been a bunch of PS1 inspired indie games as of late. Yeah, a PlayStation couldn't do all this, but that's not the point. The point is to experiment with these art styles without being held back by the hardware limitations of yesteryear, and the LEGO game aesthetic is definitely a hell of a lot more appealing than whatever cold corporate hellscape the company is pushing. Now, this one's a bit weird since it released in 2008 but moved places in 2016. The new place doesn't hit the 1 million visits mark, but the old one did, so it counts. Surprisingly, this game still gets updates, being patched as recently as this year. How many games do you know that are still getting supported 17 years after release? Survival 303 is, unsurprisingly, a survival game. I started out on a small island for the tutorial, where it teaches you how to forage, craft, mine, and so forth. The resources in this replenish really quickly. I don't see how food could ever be a problem, since the natural berries regrow faster than your hunger drains. I swam out to a nearby island and quickly realized that there's no stone out here, so I had to go back. So I built a raft, but it was unbearably slow. I think it might actually be slower than just swimming. I progressed a little more, and honestly, this game is pretty polished. If there was more players online, I could see this being a pretty fun time. My only real problems are the crafting menu, because it's pretty tedious to navigate. I ended up building a hut, the wrong way around, and stockpiling food to survive the winter. Then I logged off. I looked around a little and found a game called Survival 303 Classic, and oh yeah, this looks more like something from 2008. The map was way more barren, the lighting was much harsher, and the animals... I mean, they kind of resemble animals. This is definitely what I played when I was younger. Funnily enough, I actually prefer the crafting system here. You select objects you've laid out and it starts narrowing down the recipes they're used in. It helps with figuring out what resources are used for, and laying out your stuff to make something just feels cool. I want to see more games do something like this. This one enticed me because it advertised itself with some extremely dated memes. The Conquerors is a real-time strategy war game where you need to build up your army, command your forces around the map, and take out the other players' bases. I remember being really enamored by this game back in like 2011, even though I barely knew how to play it. I don't know, I just really liked how it looked. The tiny little army men kinda remind me of the Minecraft Clay Soldiers mod, which I was also big into around the same time. In retrospect, it's kinda weird that I never got into any proper RTS games after that. Anyway, the Conquerors was broken as hell, and it should be no surprise since its last update was well over a decade ago. The money just didn't work and I couldn't command my units. Best I could do was kick them around. It's sad to see a game like this die and slowly decay over the course of countless engine updates to the point of being completely non-functional, especially considering that in its heyday it was a pretty ambitious title for the platform. But it was only when doing some extra research while scriptwriting that I realized the Conquerors was still around. You see, back in 2013 the creator had their account terminated, and so under a new name they simply made it again. The Conquerors 3 is still around, still gets updates, and even maintains a pretty sizable player base. Neat. Galleons had an opening cutscene with this flyover of the map, pretty rare to see those at the time. This was a naval ship battle game where you would try to take down an enemy vessel and gain more points than the enemy team. It seems to have held up a bit better than most games I've looked at so far, since, it still actually functioned at least. I was about to get off, but then someone else joined, and they were a certified Galleons lore master. Before I could even say hello, they started giving me tips, telling me how to steer, that the cannons on the lower deck were stronger, and strategies for winning the game in the long run. I boarded their boat and started slowly dying. I thought this might have been a way to prevent spawn camping, but they said it was just a glitch. Speaking of glitches, there was something they called the weld bug, which sprung up in February 2024. Chunks of the boat used to split apart into smaller chunks, but now once they split, the smaller parts don't get welded back to the ship, meaning ships sink faster and you get less points for sinking them, so the meta is actually to dig up treasure instead. They also said that another game by the same dev, Checkpoint Racing, was completely destroyed by the weld bug. I checked it out and yeah, speaks for itself. They told me about a Discord server for the Galleons community, so I guess go join that if you're interested. Before leaving, I wished them good luck with regrowing the community, and they simply said, "I always have good luck." Zombie Tower has a pretty simple premise. There's a tower, it's filled with zombies. Make it to the top. Booting up, it opens to a spelling error, and in the top right I noticed I already had about $2.5 grand in the in-game currency, which I can only assume is a holdover from when I last played like 13 years ago. Using that cash, I bought myself an M4. Going into first person had a nauseating camera sway, so I guess I'm going third person for this. Inside the tower, it was quiet. Too quiet. Seriously, where is everything? I remembered zombies popping out of these holes in the ground, but I think the scripting for them just doesn't work anymore. My suspicions were confirmed when I started seeing zombies just standing around with completely broken AI. There was actually a pretty surprising amount of zombie variants, each with unique models, which I guess makes sense because this game is pretty lengthy. It took me about 20 minutes to reach the top, and I didn't even have to fight anything. I'd imagine if the enemies worked, this could take well over an hour. I do want to say that for 2010 Roblox, the gun models look pretty nice. I know it might not look like much nowadays since we have these insanely detailed modeling masterworks, but back then, even just having the slide go back when you reloaded was going above and beyond. Eventually, I reached the top and touched the golden sword. It simply said winner and booted me back to the lobby. The original creator did make the game's files publicly available, so I checked out Zombie Tower Reanimated, which is a fan remake for the modern engine. I ran around, shot some zombies, and then a random guy with like 30k joined and just started shredding zombies with a minigun. I tried to speak with them, but got no response. You might have noticed by now, but it's hard to find truly empty Roblox games, whether it be from a few holdouts that still regularly play them, or people like me being basically digital tourists. We went up a couple floors, and then he abruptly said bye and left, and so did I.
I don't sit in while you're running it down. I don't carry a gun. I drive.
Driver is an old driving sim, and it really did not stand the test of time. You could change gear, which would have been pretty novel at the time, but these cars were so hard to control that it didn't really matter. It feels like you're on ice at all times, and being in anything above first gear is just putting your fate in the hands of God. Whenever you hit a slight bump, you get sent flying. I drove out to the other island and found a cop car that would absolutely pull me over if this place wasn't empty. I decided to end it out by having a go around the racetrack. Around 2 months after I recorded that first Twisted Murderer segment, I randomly saw like 5 people playing this at 2 AM, so I hopped back on. It actually worked this time, and I played a few full games. It's just Gmod murder though, nothing super interesting. One player is a murderer who needs to kill everyone, one player is a sheriff who needs to shoot the murderer. There was a couple special rounds like Sheriff Showdown where every player has a gun and the last man standing wins. I ended up making it to the final 2 despite the fact that I clearly got shot twice and just didn't die, my Australian ping making me dodge bullets. A one-on-one duel, the only way it could end. Nobody wins. The lighting in some of these maps was just completely broken too, being way too dark and basically impossible to see anything. Not a lot to say about this one, but it's nice to see that the game at least still functions, even if it's a little janky. I was on for around 20 minutes, and slowly the lobby dwindled until I was the only one left. Find the Domos is a collectathon where you collect variations of Domo-kun, who is the mascot for Japanese Broadcasting Corporation NHK. I don't know what it was, but back in the late 2000s to early 2010s, this guy had an iron grip on internet culture, and even a bit beyond that. You were seeing this fucker at 7-Eleven. Even I fell victim to his influence. I think I still have a beanie somewhere. The rest of the game reflects the time period with very funny and relevant memes like Shoop da Whoop, Trollface, and Nyan Cat. Eventually the memories started flooding back, and I went to a couple secret areas like how clicking the globe took you into space. I guess I spent a lot of time on this one because I had already collected 144 out of the 147 total domos. I thought about trying to get the remaining 3 I was missing, but 2 of them were behind this raid-style puzzle that required 5 people, and the other was this snake that was just way too fast for me to click, so I gave up.
Nuke the whales? You don't really believe that, do you?
I don't know. Gotta nuke something.
Nuke the Whales was made by Shedletsky, who was the former creative director at Roblox. I never played it, but if you were on the site in the early 2010s, you've probably seen ads for it. I think it was used to show off how you could advertise Roblox games on the site, but the ad campaign mustn't have worked great because it didn't actually crack 1 million visits. I'm breaking my own rules to include this. On its page, there was a trailer saying 1 and description in the title. Having a read, I assumed there was some kind of contest to make a trailer, and I only bring this up because the creator of this trailer was Zeekers, like the Lethal Company guy.
We can't wait for them.
Huh. Playing it, you nuke whales to collect their blubber, and whoever has the most by the end wins. The physics in this game just didn't work. Things would get launched a short distance and then freeze until the player touched them, and touching them would sometimes just fling the player really fast. One of them sent me so high I started getting floating point errors. Really, there wasn't a lot to see with the game itself, I just wanted to talk about it. Fall Downstairs is a game where you fall downstairs. 14 million kids played this! Whoa, look at that thumbnail. I gotta see what's inside. In this, the goal was to collect eggs or something, but I'm here to fight a T-Rex. I hopped in a Jeep and drove out in search of the beasts. Oh my god. Dude, it's just like the pictures. It was basically impossible to shoot while driving, as the bullets just hit the windshield. I guess you needed to roll with a dinosaur hunting crew. I went back to the store, and they just had an open room with a golden Jeep inside. My guess is that this used to be a VIP-only area. I took it for a spin, and it handled way worse than the regular cars. My dinosaur genocide was cut short when I got cornered stealing eggs and then got into the wrong seat of my car by accident. Greenwood Town is a crime-focused roleplay server. Think something along the lines of Dark RP and Gmod. It asked me to pick a job, with stuff like citizen, police, and criminal, with a few jobs like hitman and mafia locked behind VIP. I do really want to know what the hell being a Deathbringer entails. I went with the hardest job of all, fast food worker. Right away, I saw it mention vampirism settings, which, spelling error aside, is a really weird addition to your urban roleplay game. Right out the door, I started getting chased by zombies. What the fuck is this game's theme? I ran for my life, climbing up a building where I luckily found a UMP-45, so I took my revenge. Having random citizen NPCs in a player-focused roleplay game like this is kinda weird, right? I looked at some old footage, and I don't think they were always here, so maybe they got added once the player base started dying down. I wandered around for a bit, occasionally finding more guns laying around. Actually, frequently finding them. Seriously, where do these keep coming from? At the top of this tower, I noticed that there was an ominous black sphere shrouded in fog floating above the town. I have no idea what that is. I like the building variety. These aren't all just empty houses. There's a pool, church, and a fast food joint, right next to a hospital, right next to a rundown crack house. Obviously this game is cops and robbers focused, so it's no surprise to see that most buildings follow that theme. I snuck into the police station through a window, which didn't look quite right, but whatever. I shot a training dummy, which bleeds for some reason, kinda strange, and I think I'd seen everything at this point, so the only thing left to do was do what every fast food worker probably thinks about, and go absolutely postal. I just started gunning down anything that moves. Maybe it was the influence of the black sphere that made me do this. I tried to trickshot this guy, and he actually just vanished. I think it's worth mentioning that despite all this senseless violence, my crime counter on the leaderboard never actually went up. I guess this means I'm innocent. Do you think that'll hold up in court? This one is old, and you can tell just by looking at it. Look at the model they used for an AK-47. That's just a 2x4. There's these two forts, separated by a, forest, I guess. Pretty simple capture the flag stuff. This was back when turret emplacements would need you to equip an item to use them, and the scripts for that are all broken. I could hit the fix button, but it just started spawning more, and I ended up with a biblically accurate turret. Vehicles don't work either, so I had to walk over to the other base on foot. I couldn't even steal the flag, because whenever I held it out, I would get teleported back to where it spawns. Oh, and sometimes when you get out of a seat, you would get flung backwards every time you jumped. I've actually had this happen to me in a few other games too, but I've got no idea why. Hopefully some Roblox programming wizard sees this and can tell me why this happens. Well, this turned out differently to how I expected. I was planning to have a nostalgic trip down memory lane, but it ended up feeling more like I'm exploring a graveyard of games that have decayed beyond functioning. I'm not going to act like anything on here would have been some peak gaming experience we're missing out on, but it definitely feels weird to see these games left to rot, and now all we can do is explore the empty husk they left behind. Maybe someday I'll give this its own video, looking at newer games that still work. Roblox itself definitely isn't going anywhere, but there's no guarantee the things made with it will keep working through its countless engine updates. I'm so conflicted on my feelings about this platform as a whole, because on one hand I think it provides a pretty important service, being an entry point for game development aimed at younger people. The dumbass kids making stupid bullshit today are the game developers of tomorrow, and Roblox being a free and accessible tool for development could be what gets them interested in pursuing it further. And even if they don't, it's still a creative outlet where people can make some pretty cool things. But on the other hand, it's a corporate cancer on the industry that makes its money by exploiting the hard work of those aforementioned kids and has a myriad of predatory marketing strategies that are once again aimed mostly at kids. I cannot put into words the contempt I have for the corporate executives running this company. But at least there's some good to find here from the creative minds that have put their time and passion towards making something special. I only found out about this game because when I was talking about Half-Life 2 Deathmatch, I wanted to make sure I used the term arena shooter correctly, and the image on the Wikipedia page was this. Assault Cube is a first-person shooter released in 2006 under the name Action Cube. It's a mod of a 2001 FPS game simply titled Cube, and aims to provide a more realistic gameplay experience. A simple comparison would be the difference between something like Quake and Counter-Strike. Booting the game up, there's no main menu, it just starts you in an empty single-player match. One of the first things I noticed is that you can run faster going diagonally, like in Doom. You can also enter an edit mode and start altering the maps in real time, which is pretty neat. You can place props, pickups, map brushes, and even change the skybox at the click of a button. It's pretty cool how modular this all is. I joined an empty Capture the Flag server. While I was trying to get a feel for each of the guns, someone else connected. We fought a few times, and then in less than a minute they'd left. That's odd. I thought I'd just run the flag back and forth between objectives and enjoy the quiet ambience, but once you pick up the flag it starts playing music. And the sound for scoring is really loud. I decided to check out the only populated server. There was about 5 people on, and we were on Capture the Flag for a few minutes before someone called a vote to change the map. I said yes, and once the map changed, everyone had left except for me and my new arch rival, you. This map was super open, and let me tell you, it ain't big enough for the both of us. We were going back and forth, trading kills. Neither of us would pull ahead until you leaned forward in their gamer chair and started winning every encounter. I think it ended up like 5-10 their way. Defeated and ashamed, I went to another server. Something funny is that because this is a tiny game from 20 years ago, the load times on modern hardware are almost instant, so I went through a bunch of the maps, which they had a fair few of. I really like how this game looks. I know I've never played it before, but the primitive 3D is kinda nostalgic to me. I'm also a big fan of when pickups are floating and spinning, although it kinda goes against the more realistic vibe the game was going for. There was also these really crusty voice callouts you could do since there's no voice chat.
I'm in position now. Recover the flag.
I invented a new grenade lineup to hit this cubby on AC Africa. Nobody will ever use this in a real match. I hopped back into multiplayer, and my nemesis, you, was also here. I learned right away in my first encounter that this game has friendly fire. Oops, my bad. I've gotten no idea how Capture the Flag works, if there's like a score you need to reach, or if the game just goes to time and whoever has more flags win. We started 3-2, and by the time I left it was 7-3. I got my revenge on you, and then perished briefly after. At this point it was getting pretty late, so I went to bed. The next morning I gave it another shot. We were going to Brazil. I tried out all the guns on my time here. There's 5 total, and they're all pretty standard. You've got an assault rifle for mid-range fight, an SMG with pretty high recoil, a shotgun, love shotguns, a sniper rifle complete with one-shot headshots, and a carbine that admittedly sucks. Maybe I was just bad at using it, but I was getting nothing done with this thing. Outside of that, everyone has the same pistol, grenades, and a knife. Although you can find a Quake-style power-up that gives you akimbo pistols with an insane fire rate. You might have also noticed, but the guns have so much recoil that it physically pushes you backwards. And yes, you can use it to gain height. Realistic mod, by the way. Something else to mention with Assault Cube is that on the scoreboard, you get 1 point for a kill, and 2 points if you gib someone. Man, when's the last time you gibbed a guy? Games don't really do that anymore, you ever think about that? There's only 3 ways to gib someone. Grenades, which have a pretty small blast radius, knife kills, which need you to be in melee range, and headshots with the sniper rifle. That last one seems really strong. Sniper rifles are already kinda hard to balance, because if the player using it is skilled enough, it's just a one-shot kill at any range. Most games will balance this with a charge time, or expensive cost, or making it a rare spawn, but in Assault Cube, you get double points for doing what you were gonna do with it anyway. It probably doesn't matter that much, since Capture the Flag seems to be the dominant game mode, but it's still a pretty interesting design choice. I should mention that despite most people having pretty terrible connection, me included, the game was still pretty playable. It was a bit off, but considering everyone had over 150 ping, it wasn't that bad. Anyway, we were crushing this lobby. I was fragging out, the team was up 7-1, and we felt unstoppable. Then I had the classic experience of getting auto-balanced onto the losing team. After this, the map changed to a soccer field. Maybe this is where the Combine play with the prisoners. You can probably guess, but it doesn't make for a good Capture the Flag map, so it was quickly voted off of. We were back in that map I fought you in, and in a Looney Tunes moment, I got shot in the head by my teammate. The last server I checked out was hosting some kind of jump map where you had to race through some platforming using rifle boosting, grenade jumps, and swimming. I had no idea this game even had swimming mechanics because all the water on official maps was like knee deep. I was gunning it through the halls, literally, and by the end, I had finished it in almost exactly 160 seconds. Assault Cube is a fun relic from the mid-2000s. It's got a niche but dedicated community, and despite how small the scope of the game is, I still had a great time from what I played. It's free, so check it out if it's something you're interested in. Landfall is the studio behind games like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, Stick Fight the Game, and Cluster Truck. They're well known for their projects being entirely physics-based, which can lead to some silly and comedic slapstick. The games are janky, but in the fun kind of way. The bugs are part of the appeal. Though they do seem to be branching out from that with their upcoming title, Haste Broken Worlds. It's become a bit of a tradition with the studio that they do something on April Fools, whether it be a DLC that adds more bugs to a game, or just releasing Haste. Like while I was working on this video, okay. They did this like a week after I wrote upcoming in the script. Among these are parodies of whatever was popular at the time, such as Totally Accurate Battlegrounds in 2018, being based off the Battle Royale craze of the time, or Content Warning in 2024, being based off the co-op social horror craze of, right now. It's still ongoing. Though an often forgotten title of theirs is Totally Accurate Battle Zombielator, because unlike the other games I just mentioned, this was pulled from the Steam store after release. They still link to a community download on their website, so it's not like it's lost or anything, but apparently this version has slight differences to the Steam release, which is what I'll be looking at. I played this back when it released, and it's just been sitting in my Steam library ever since. Without any further delay, let's check it out. First thing I noticed is that there's motion blur and I can't turn it off, so sorry if the footage looks kinda whack. Right off the bat, the game's vibes are just weird. I get it's probably just the sunset, but it looks like the map is covered in an ominous red mist. The game had that distinct low-poly landfall aesthetic, but it basically just dropped me in the middle of a field, so I went up to a lighthouse to get a better look around, found a couple guns on the way, and saw some buildings in the distance, so I jumped off and learned that this game has fall damage. I respawned close to another town, found a revolver, and started shooting at the nearest undead I could find. Now, if you know anything about zombie games, you'd know that zombies love sound, and firing a gun will alert every zombie in a 300-mile radius to your exact location. I'm pretty sure firing guns just spawns more zombies, because holy shit, these things did not stop coming. The guns actually feel pretty good though. Unlike most games where you fire bullets from your camera and the gun in your hands is basically just set dressing, the guns here are real, physical objects in your hands. You need to align the barrel with where you want to shoot it, and it adds a very physical feel to the gunplay. I kinda love it, even though it's a bit wonky. I wandered around a bit at night and started hearing these booming footsteps in the distance, slowly getting louder and louder. I shot at a zombie, but as I aimed down sights at another, it spoke. There was another player online? What the hell is someone doing playing this 8-year-old unlisted Steam game? And what were the odds of someone playing it at the same time as me? Our meeting was cut short as a huge zombie with a crown pulled up on us. It went for the other guy, so I opened fire, but that attracted the attention of some tall, glowing zombie that wiped the floor with me. There's a lot of unique zombie types, like upside-down ones, lanky ones, or absolutely gigantic ones. You never really know what you're gonna run into. Next life, we actually respawned in the same place. They got killed by the king zombie, so we explored a little together. The buildings in this game are all kinda nonsensical and surreal. They have that getting over it feel, where it's just a bunch of random objects stacked together. We got into a big battle, and enacted our revenge on the king zombie. Its pathfinding was kinda bad, and it got stuck on trees a lot, so we just unloaded lead into it until it fell over. I am now ride or die with this unnamed random guy. I asked them why they're still playing, and they simply said that they still love the game. I also asked if they were on Steam, and they weren't. I guess the Steam and community versions are compatible. No idea what the differences are then. They said we should go to the lighthouse, and after getting there, I lost them. Like, they were just gone. For some reason after this, the chat box would just randomly start opening itself. I've got no idea why. Things were going good until I came across this tall grass field and I had flashbacks to 2017. I remembered that those fields are one of the most dangerous areas, inhabited by those glowing zombies that slaughtered me earlier, so I steered clear. Shortly after, I ran into another guy. What the fuck? I guess this game isn't as dead as I thought. They had one of the secret Easter egg guns, this blue gun that launched zombies far away. I told them it was crazy to see others on, and they simply said, I like to kill the zombies. Hell yeah, I can get behind that. So we traveled and shot some zombies together, until we came to a bridge when they said, my time has come, before leaving all their guns and jumping into the abyss. The knockback gun is mine, and boy does this thing knock back. I walked for about 10 minutes, then found another guy. Honestly, doesn't even surprise me anymore. And my morbid curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to feel what it was like to get hit by the knockback gun. So I gave it to them and told me to shoot me with it. It has passed between 3 hands now. They didn't understand what I meant and just blasted me point blank with a shotgun, so I had to reiterate. The knockback gun works about how you'd expect. New spawn. I tried climbing to the top of this tower, and it was tough. Platforming with landfall physics is about as painful as it sounds, and I ended up bumping my head on a window and falling to my untimely doom. This was actually a bit of a blessing in disguise, as I respawned right next to where I died before and could pick up a bunch of my leftover guns. Yeah, the physics just does that sometimes. I also found the first guy I met, and could only tell because for some reason they repeated the first letter of every sentence twice. They explained their game crashed earlier, and that they literally have grabber. Whatever that means. The guy who shot me met up with us, and then a mysterious 4th person appeared. This game was surprisingly active. I know the point of this video was meant to be empty servers, but I was really expecting this place to be barren. I'm very surprised. Blue told us to go gangster, which was just a joke setting where pressing G would make you hold your gun sideways and play music, and then they started talking like Jesse Pinkman. They said they wanted to get the cursed AK-47, which could only be found in those nightmare fields from earlier. The whole squad rolled out for what would be our last stand. We fought some zombies on the border, but I had basically no ammo. Venturing into the fields, the wind starts howling and you start hearing the discordant chimes of unseen bells. It's actually got some really cool ambience for an April Fool's game. I checked the altar, but it was empty. We started running, but I was overwhelmed by the undead forces and fell trying to hold them off. I can only pray that my allies made it out alive. And then I hopped off. It's a different day, and I decided to hop on briefly to check something. In this little time, I came across a fella introducing his new group, Gay Sex Union. As I was walking away, they opened fire on me, so I popped back. This was a big mistake, as they unleashed their secret technique on me and sent me flying. I guess nobody crosses the Gay Sex Union and lives. Overall, Tab Z is just a funny little April Fool's joke that surprisingly retains a few players. I was only on for about an hour, and somehow ran into 4 people, and even more on the second day. I know it kinda goes against the whole idea of a video on empty servers, but I just really wasn't expecting to see anyone online at all when I wrote it into the script. Luanti, formerly Mindtest, isn't actually a game. Rather, it's an open source voxel game engine that people have modded the hell out of. But generally speaking, it's Minecraft. It's a free alternative to Minecraft. Fucked up in the crib playing Mineclone 2. I've never played this before, so let's just take a look in the server browser and see where it takes me. This was some kind of PvP focused mode. I assume the score goes up when either team gets a kill, so that means thousands have fallen before I arrived. And yeah, it sure looked like a war zone. I ventured out a little further, and the map just stopped loading properly, so I couldn't stick around. I was intrigued by the name of this server, but I think it was just a regular world. I wish I could comment on it more, but it's just Bizarro Minecraft. I collected some termite concrete and got into a scuffle with a hyena. I also couldn't figure out how to eat food. This was a Backrooms-inspired game. You walk around empty liminal spaces looking for these portals that take you to the next empty liminal space. That's really all there is to it. There was a couple cool areas, but I can't really describe them without just showing them. Honestly, I think the Backrooms are an interesting idea conceptually, but holy shit it got out of hand fast. Do you think the guy who made the original Backrooms post on 4chan looks back on it like Oppenheimer? The name reminded me of that TFC map, so I just had to join. It was a pretty normal looking multiplayer server, with this central town filled with player-made builds. A few of these were dated back to 2019, so I assumed the server was made around the same time. This place was big. It actually gave me a couple frame rate issues, so sorry if the footage looks bad. I found these phone booth looking things that turned out to be teleporters. I tried taking one to the Great Hall, but it was sealed off, so I took one to the Fake Fred shop instead. This was a mall made by a fella named Fake Fred, and they had most stores dated to 2021, all built by the same guy. There was a sign thanking someone for buying out the entire stock. I wonder how long ago that was. On the roof there was a space elevator, so I went up to space. There was a sign saying building was encouraged, so I patched some holes and got 10 mine gold for some reason. Up here there was the Fake Space Extreme Paragliding. So I bought a glider, but it really worked more like a parachute. I'm not sure if that's because my connection was terrible, or if it's just like that. This whole time I thought this server would be pretty inactive, since the last thing I saw was from 4 years ago, but that idea got completely shattered when I came across this. This was built like a week before I got on. Right past that was the entrance to New Wonderland, which was an honestly pretty impressive city. Not only was it gigantic, but also insanely detailed, with most builds having fully designed interiors. They had a store selling doors, a chocolate factory, a cinema, a club. It was just packed with things to see. I saw a name tag in the distance called Terry, and I thought it might be another player, but it was just a store NPC. I left 1 mine gold in the box with him. I'd seen enough of the city at this point, so I tried catching a bus to... I'm not even gonna try. When I tried this, I timed out from the server and couldn't interact with anything, so I left and tried to rejoin, but it wouldn't connect. It's over. I know how to play Minesweeper, I'm not very good at it though, but Minesweeper in 3D? This is fucked. I do not have the brainpower to process this at all. Until I figured out right-clicking would delete blocks and flag bombs, so you could just hold right-click and clear everything. Kinda defeats the point. This was made for a 2024 game jam. I started out in this black brick church with red text telling me to perform the ritual. I stood on a symbol and started floating up. I had transcended into the world of eyeballs. There was a few simple instructions. Good eyeballs protect, the unseen are lost, and beware the thing. You have to make it to an exit portal while always remaining within the eyeball's line of sight. It's kind of like an anti-stealth game, where instead of staying hidden, you must be seen at all times. Stay in the darkness for too long, and you'll have to start over. It's an interesting concept, but the levels themselves are a bit of a mixed bag. Most revolve around hitting a bunch of switches to access the exit, which is a solid foundation, but there's a lot of following eyeballs around, and that just means waiting for cycles. It totally kills the pace when I know what I need to do, but I have to wait like 30 seconds before I can do it. This game is also pretty punishing, since if you mess up near the end of a level, you have to restart the whole thing, which means waiting for more cycles. The light horror atmosphere is nice though, and the music reminds me of the Kingsfield soundtrack, which I mean in a good way. It had a gore warning, but there's really nothing worse than what you see here. It's pretty tame. It introduces new mechanics the further you go, like red eyes you need to hide from, and black gloss that blocks the eye's vision, but they seem to interact in kinda janky ways. It's a pretty novel idea with pretty mediocre execution. I can't be too harsh though, since once again it was just a small proof of concept for a game jam. This one was called R-Place. For those who missed it, r/place was an experiment Reddit held on April Fools 2017 and 2022. It was a huge blank canvas where each user could change the color of a single pixel once every 5 minutes. Communities banded together to create art of their shared interests, as well as split off into different factions seeking to destroy or protect what others had built. There was limited space, so not everyone got to survive. The second time around it was a bit less interesting, since most people just made flags, or at least tried to, but I do specifically remember contributing to the Yumaniki part at the top, and forming alliances with the Detroit Red Wings, Taiwan, Detroit Lions, and Doom communities to repel the attacks from Turkish TikTokers and literal pedophiles. That sounds made up, but no, it was real. It really brought the most random communities together. Like, what do these two things have in common? Fucking nothing. Anyway, the server I joined was mostly just a bunch of flags, and the timer was only like 5 seconds per pixel, so I don't really know what the point was. Hopefully this is the last time I ever have to bring up a Reddit. And that's all I'm going to talk about for Luanti. I know it's a pretty short segment, but since I've already spent so much time talking about Minecraft, I wanted to keep it pretty brief. There's probably a lot more that I missed, but I looked at about 5 times the amount of servers I talked about. There just really wasn't a lot to see in most of these. Garry's mod holds a special place in my heart. I spent a lot of time when I was younger just messing about in the sandbox, but Gmod is definitely more well known for its multiplayer game modes. Stuff like TTT, Prop Hunt, Dark RP, as well as other things like Jailbreak or Zombie Survival. But we're going to be looking further down here today, joining game modes I have fond memories of, as well as ones I've never heard of. Oh shit, I forgot to install Source. We're going racing. It was not an orange map, so no distractions out on the track. One of the first things I noticed is that the cars were way more in depth than I thought they would be, letting you change specific parts like the camshaft, tires, cooling, and it even lets you put a spoiler on it. But to my knowledge, the only car you can drive is the Half-Life 2 Jeep. Regardless, I was going to get out on the asphalt and race. This drives like shit. I guess the idea is that you'd upgrade your car to make it go faster, but this is just obscenely slow. It's also worth mentioning that my connection to most of these servers is really bad since I'm on the other side of the planet, so turning has about a full second of delay. The server also only ran orange maps, which is kinda odd to me. I mean, the point of these is that they're quick to download and you can run them on just about anything, but this specific server had a shitload of VIP only player models, so it still took forever to join. Just seemed kind of counterintuitive. Sled Build is a Gmod game mode about building a sled. You just slap together some abomination out of the Gmod prop list, and then race them, preferably with other people. But since I'm all alone, I'm basically just playing sandbox with an added goal in mind. But that wasn't going to stop me from building the greatest sled this world has ever seen. Steel base, cinder blocks, wheels. It's a car, I'm building a car. It was going great until I went to weld it and accidentally used the remover tool. I tried to save it, but after this it was just busted. Regardless, I hauled it out to the track, and honestly it worked pretty okay. It flipped over like 3 times, but it did get the job done. Look at that, first place. I saw a game mode called Go Fish Yourself 2, and I love fishing, so I wanted to see what it was, but the only server running it was on an outdated version of Gmod, so instead I looked at a game mode simply titled Go Fish. Joining the server displayed a message with a lot of meowing posted by a user named Frog. Hate to tell you, but that's not the sound the frog makes. Luckily, this wasn't the card game, but actual fishing. I have no idea how to fish though, since I didn't have a rod or anything, so I just kinda walked around the island for a bit. Since I had my fists out, I thought I might have to go into the deep and catch the fish by hand, but you drown almost instantly in this mode. I kept wandering around aimlessly. If only there was some kind of way I could learn how this game mode works. At the top of the lighthouse, I decided to jump off and check for full damage. And there was! Yeah, my ping here was abysmal. I finally saw that button in the top left, and learned that this is a game mode from around 2006 to 2008, which in the world of Gmod is pretty ancient. Like, this predates TTT, Prop Hunt, hell I'd wager it's older than a few of the people who've played it. Fishing was completely physics-based. You had to combine the hook and rod, then bait the hook and dangle it in the water. It should go without saying, but completely physics-based fishing did not work great with my 400 ping. My first catch wasn't a fish at all, it was actually a crate. I wonder what kind of treasure awaited me inside. Gold? Jewels? Doubloons? A half-zombie and a Vortigaunt. What the fuck? The Vortigaunt was camping the docks, and I didn't feel confident fist-fighting it, so I led it to the guards, and then punched out the zombie and it dropped a pulse rifle. Back to fishing, it's another crate, and this time it's Father Grigori, and he's pissed. I'm starting to wonder if there's any actual fish at all. He also has an insane amount of health, and won't get lured back to the gods, so I'm kinda stumped here. I tried to fish up something to use as a weapon, and I got the gravity gun, so I fished up another crate to throw at him, but it just flat out didn't work. As a last-ditch effort, I broke the crate hoping for a better weapon, and it spawned another Vortigaunt, so I left. Overall, Go Fish is a pretty strange mode, considering all you catch is crates with enemies in them. Maybe there's other things you can fish up, but I didn't find any. After seeing the title, I just had to know what was going on here. Turns out, it's inspired by the Spider-Man PS2 pizza delivery minigame, with Deathmatch added on top. You can sling webs and run on walls to deliver the pizzas, presumably while trying to shoot at other Spider-Men to stop them from delivering theirs. Spider-Man would be way more efficient if he just had a gun. I'm saying there's a joke, but I'm sure there's some comic out there where that happens. The movement actually feels pretty good. It's a little clunky to start, but once you get the flow down, it can be pretty satisfying. Unfortunately, that's really all I can do. Without other people, the deathmatch aspect doesn't work, and it's really just going from point A to point B over and over. Space Age only had one server, hosting a map called SB_Gooniverse_V4. Upon entering the Gooniverse, the first thing I noticed is that the HUD had this weird delay where it didn't follow your camera properly, which was honestly kind of hard to look at. The planet I was on was pretty empty. I guess player-made builds were supposed to make up most of what goes on here. I found a fast travel point and went to look at the other planets. First up was Cerebus, and its surface was covered in sand and crystals. Then I perished instantly from exposure. I guess this planet is too close to the sun or something. This is also when I learned that your Steam friends list displays what map you're on, because I got this message. This was at 2 AM, by the way. I traveled to a few more planets, but there wasn't much to see. I guess this was some kind of roleplay mode because I had genuinely no idea what to do. The only thing left to do was explore the vast reaches of the cosmos, so I started working on my spacecraft, the Goon ship. It was beautiful, and I was ready to take to the stars. Okay, why does the vacuum of space take longer to kill me than drowning did in the fishing game? Trying to join servers for this one, my game crashed immediately, so I'm actually cheating a little and playing this off a local server because I really wanted to talk about it, and when else am I going to get the chance to? Jazztronauts starts out in this Half-Life 2 custom campaign, with the player being tasked to give support to the rebel forces. Pretty quickly, you'll realize that something is off, as the map is clearly broken, and it starts transitioning to some more eerie locations. Eventually, you'll find an ominous room, where all the torches ignite like it's some kind of ritual. And then it cuts to this group of cats. The jig is up, it's actually a silly game mode. This is the Band, a group of interdimensional thieves who break into Gmod maps looking for shards, and stealing whatever else they come across in the process. On your way out, one of them drops their Prop Snatcher, a tool that lets you steal anything and everything from the map, whisking it away and giving you some money based on the value of the prop. From here it becomes a surreal run through the level, grabbing whatever you can while making a break for the exit. At the end of the prologue, you meet up with those cats again, and they ask you to join them. They take you to the Bar Samsara, which serves as a hub world. From here, you can use their machine to invade and rob any map uploaded to the Gmod workshop. This isn't a curated list or anything, it's truly random. You could load into some of the most iconic Gmod maps that everyone has seen, like TTT Waterworld, or whatever this is. Then you steal everything you can, and call the train on any surface to leave, which has some really cool visuals. I've really got no idea how they made an effect like this work, but it looks great. And I also love how it tries to sync the music with the train breaking through the wall. It's a really nice touch. Back at the bar, you can trade in all the props you stole for some cold hard cash. The sound of props slamming into each other is weirdly nostalgic to me. It's up there with the sound of rummaging through a Lego bucket. You can buy extra tools from the bartender, like goggles that let you see the inner workings of a map, or the power to teleport through walls, along with relevant upgrades for your gear, like the ability to steal entire map brushes with the Prop Snatcher. It's got a full story too, with each band member having a quest line where they ask you to find specific props. After completing a quest for them, you'll get a cutscene that progresses their story further, and these characters honestly grew on me throughout the game. It's not some flawless masterpiece of writing, but each character is lovable in their own way, and the story isn't afraid to explore some pretty heavy topics. The overarching goal is to collect 100 of these shards you can find scattered around the map to see the ending. These can spawn anywhere, and can sometimes be out of reach. Luckily, you can stack boxes to solve your problems, which means Jazztronauts is an immersive sim. Take this for example, one spawned way above the street, so I run into this house, find my way into the attic, teleport through the roof, and then use the added height from a sprint jump to grab it. Jazztronauts is one of the most unique gaming experiences I've ever had, and it's especially interesting to me because it's something you could only do on Gmod. After getting all the endings on my own, I tried it out co-op with some friends, and it works really well. I didn't tell them anything before going in, so they were completely blind. We could get anything.
Could they be universe?
Yeah, we could. So, you guys wanna go to Bad Nights at Freddy's? We started out with 4 players, but a couple more joined and we ended up with 6. With this many people though, we would just swarm the map like piranhas and clean out everything within seconds. I'd say if you're gonna try it out co-op, 2 to 4 players would be the sweet spot. I ran into more technical issues in multiplayer, but I'd reckon that's more my computer just being unable to handle hosting a server while recording and in a voice call with 6 people.
I stole an error sign and my game...
My game crashed.
Same. Overall, this game mode just fucking rules. I highly recommend it. It's a love letter to the art of map making and is definitely worth your time. If you're gonna check out anything from this video, make it Jazztronauts. Well, that was a nice journey that didn't need to be this long, but I had a lot of fun making it. You might be wondering what the hell the point of all this was, and there really wasn't one. This is just something I like doing, and decided to make a video out of it since, you know, I guess there's an audience for it, and I wanted to try something different to my usual videos. Exploring random games and servers is something I recommend you try out for yourself, since there's no knowing what you'll find. The internet is an extremely vast and fascinating place with more things in it than anybody could realistically see in a lifetime. Because regardless of who you are, you can create something and put it up for people to see, whether it be a game, map, mod, illustration, photograph, or dumbass video. I think it's a true miracle that anybody can make something and put it online, and even if it doesn't get a big audience, some dipshit like me might come across it 10 years later and think it's pretty cool. You don't need to be an extremely skilled or talented artist to create something special. My favorite game of all time was made by a solo developer who we know basically nothing about. The passion and love put into projects by small creators is always beautiful. I don't want to come off like I'm above enjoying the next big trend or flavor of the month AAA game, because I'm absolutely not. But finding smaller, more personal projects always feels more special. And yeah, while a lot of the stuff I looked at, wasn't great, I'm glad that it exists, and I wouldn't have it changed for the world. I may never touch Half-Life 2 Deathmatch co-op maps ever again, but I'm sure there's people out there who have fond memories of their time on them, and maybe even some people who met new friends through it. Hell, 2 of the people I played Jazztronauts with met each other on a Gmod zombie survival server like 10 years ago and they're still friends. Everything I looked at meant something to somebody, whether it be a creative outlet, a hangout spot for friends, or maybe even just a place to unwind after a day at school or work. Things on the internet don't always last forever, but the memories they create just might. Thanks for watching. I started this as just something smaller to do between bigger projects, and then it ended up becoming one of the bigger projects. Oops. I hope it turned out alright, or was at least good enough to be put on your second monitor while you do something else. I have no idea if I'm remotely funny or engaging, so this might have turned out really boring. Sorry if that's the case. It was originally meant to be half internet exploration, half a review of Psychopomp Gold, but I ended up scrapping that idea because it was fucking stupid and had almost no cohesion. I might give Psychopomp its own video, but I also think that game is better experienced completely blind, and it's kind of hard for me to talk about it without giving away too much, so I'll probably just leave it as a recommendation at the end of this completely unrelated video. This was a one-off, and I'll go back to regular reviews after this. I'll probably do some more non-review stuff in the future, but don't expect this to become a series or anything. Also, sorry about getting a bit pretentious at the end. It will happen again. Oh, and I'm recording these lines way later, actually just a few days before I plan to upload. This video took way too long to make. But thanks for 1,000 subscribers. I know that doesn't sound like much, but the fact that anyone out there watches my videos means a lot to me. I'd do a longer celebration, but this video is long enough as is, so I just want to give a sincere thank you, especially to the people who somehow made it this far in the video. I don't have much else to say, so thanks for watching, and take it easy.